We all know what scaling is. That is a company growing, whether that is adding new locations, adding new staff. Scaling is a healthy and normal part of the business process. Typically, businesses have to grow by some percent just to keep up with inflation and other investments and things like that. But why is it in ABA, and I'm going to pass this to you, Stephen, why is it in ABA that scaling so often seems to lead to that lower quality service?
Yeah, I think like a lot of, especially, small BCBA owned businesses, they start off, maybe they take a few clients, they hire an RBT to take on the direct service. And this seems to be working fairly well, right? So, okay, we've got 10 clients. I think I can do this. And they're able to keep track of everything. They know all the clients' names. They know all the parents' names, right? They understand all the nuances of the business. They may even be doing the billing. They're doing the hiring. Hopefully not too much, but they're also doing the firing, right? They know all the policies, everything intimately. And then when they add that next BCBA, maybe that BCBA doesn't have the same knowledge that they do. Maybe they're having to spend a lot more time supervising that BCBA, but they're getting further away from the direct care, the intimate knowledge of the families. And we see that quality soon starts to go down simply because they cannot micromanage as much as they could, as they're scaling. That's typically what I see. So normally what happens with a lot of smaller BCBA owned companies is they're working 45 hours a week at the start, right? Everything's going good. They've added a second BCBA. Now they're working 60 hours. Maybe they add a third BCBA. Now they're working 70 or 80 hours. And it's just too much to keep up with. And that's where we start to see things. They're getting burnt out, they're overloaded, and it's going to impact quality. What do you
I
think,
think
April?
that's uh, I think that's really important there that sometimes when we think about, at least when I imagine scaling as a BCBA, it almost felt like the villain, and anybody who like engages with the villain is, dancing with the devil, right? And so how do you not get hurt scaling? Well, you don't scale. But what I hear in your answer, Stephen, that is that if scaling is necessary to keep your business flowing and afloat, then it really becomes a passionate BCBA who wants to keep an incredibly high quality of service, but just get bogged down with more and more and more tasks. I wonder, April, when you were in the process of growing, your ABA business, what were some of those tasks that continually hit you that like were just sucking up time after time and time and ultimately pushing you farther away from, to Stephen's point, the actual quality of the business?
Yeah, everything. No, things start to snowball. I think that the picture that Stephen painted was pretty accurate representation of what could happen, right? Especially if you're not looking ahead, and if you don't have certain plans in place, right? That you start to take on more hats, right? You're wearing more hats as you're hiring new people. Let's see, I remember that in itself was a whole new thing, right? I've never hired anyone before. I'd never been the one that made those policies and procedures to hire someone. Like I didn't know, like I had to research all the human resources piece of it, the law behind it, the what are you allowed to ask in an interview? There was a time where I didn't even know that there were certain things you weren't supposed to ask in an interview. I'm like, I need staff. I'm going to hire staff. Um, but then once you have those staff, like knowing how to keep up with all of the parts involved with having staff. And that was a big piece, I think, that I wasn't quite I did understand the big picture going into it of how much time it was going to take just to manage staff. And so each step that came in would take one step further away from the clinical piece. And I was lucky I had a partner who took care of the billing parts, and he took care of a lot of the business day-to-day operational stuff. So we did have a team. So I was able to focus on that clinical stuff for longer than maybe someone who was just solo,
Right.
doing this. And as we were growing, it was really hard that this, I guess really the big piece was like the staffing, and just the putting out fires and the like people coming to me like, oh, I'm the person people are coming to for these problems now. I'm the one that has to have an answer here. Hold on a minute, I need to take a minute for the answer. And I don't remember how, it wasn't very long into it that I had to have a really serious conversation with Steven saying like, I have to pull back clinically. I cannot maintain a full caseload and manage staff and do all of the pieces needed. So that was a really hard. I had to get to like a really burnt out low before I was comfortable with even having that conversation. I almost had to be at a point where I didn't have a choice before I had that conversation. And I could see in my own work, I didn't have the energy that I like to bring to sessions, right? Because I was still seeing kids one-on-one too. I didn't have the energy that I like to have. And I was cutting corners here and there just to try to get all the minimum of all the things done that I needed to get done.
I think I think that's a great it's a great thought of almost like the canary in the coal mine, right? It was like the canary in the coal mine metaphor is, in the coal mining world, you would, back in the day, of course, you would bring the canary deep underground because the canary would run out of oxygen first. And if the canary died, it was a sign that the cave was about to go under. And that was kind of what I was hoping we would circle around in this conversation as well, is what are the leading indicators, the KPIs, the canary in the coal mines that tell you that if you don't change now, client quality is going to end up being impacted. So April, and I'd be curious on your side, Stephen, too, as you kind of scaled the operation side, what were some of those things that, looking back, hindsight being 2020, or even when you consult with other providers today, you're like, oh, you said XYZ, it's time to, you know, hire the next person, pull the next lever, things like that.
Yeah, I think that a big part for me is I had a lot in my head. I had a lot of, okay, I realize I need a policy for this, or I realize, okay, maybe if we all did something a certain way, we could automate a little bit and maybe make things a little more efficient and help communicate. But I really never took the time to sit down because I felt like I didn't have the time to sit down and like put the stuff in place, right? To be able to then communicate what was in my head to my staff. And because of that, so like the canary part, right? Like the thing that started to show up were people were not following my rules. They weren't doing what I needed them to do. So that was causing problems, and I was having to put out fires, and I was having drama, and I was having people not show up to work. And then I realized that I'm not communicating these things clearly to them because even though they're all in my head, I don't really have a good picture myself of what's going on because I'm not focusing on one specific thing. I'm like jumping back and forth to so many different things. And I have ADHD, so my neurospicy brain loved those like that situation sometimes. And then other days that situation was just not okay. I couldn't make it. Luckily, Stephen had operations background and understanding of like how to put processes and stuff in place. And it took me a while to be open to allowing that help, because you're not an ABA, you don't know, you just do the billing. Um, and I quickly realized, like, I think you heard me talk about task analysis. We were like doing a training on brushing teeth or something. I can't remember. And you were like, okay, bro, this is what I'm trying to do is kind of like a task analysis, right? You just got to put these steps in place. And so I think I started to allow that a little bit, but I think that that was the biggest looking back was, um, were those like those drama situations, those communication, like the fallout of the not communicating, like the people not doing what I needed them to do, because I was ultimately expecting them to read my mind. But I think that was the biggest thing, was just the drama and the fires every day. I didn't feel like I could get ahead, and that's why.
Yeah, it almost feels like quicksand, right? Like you're just not quite able to get out of it, right? You're kind of stuck in this management of fires. And it sometimes gets really like you can get addicted to that. And I call it Mighty Mouse syndrome. You've come and you've saved the day and everything's great now, right? And you get that hit and it's like, awesome, I did this thing. But you're not really forward thinking. I think one thing, and maybe you'll appreciate this, April, that I wish we would have put in place when we were scaling was I had no vision of what the end goal was going to be, right? It was just I'm scaling for scaling's sake. And I think
Right.
that you're scaling because this is what you're supposed to do. We have three BCBAs and now we need a fourth. And of course, once we have four, we would need five. So what is the end goal? Why am I building this out? What kind of financial, like, how is this going to impact my retirement? Right. So, like, these things really should be, you should have a really good vision, I think, of what does this end up looking like? Am I building a multi-state, multi-clinic practice, or am I building a somewhat medium-sized in-home ABA agency, right?
Right, because at the end of the day, I wanted to have two or three BCVs and have a little small place. I wanted to be able to know everyone's name. I wanted to be able to do house like we had in home. I wanted to be able to go to each client on a like quarterly basis to keep an eye on things. I wanted to be able to micromanage and keep it like a family. And he wanted to be like national.
Yes. So I think that that's really important is why am I doing this, right? What is my goal here? Why did I start this thing? And what does it look like at the end, right? Whether this is financial, if this is quality, if this is the number of clients, but having some kind of understanding on, okay, this is where I want to get to. It's really important. And I don't know that enough people are spending enough time at the beginning looking at that, like what does this look like? And we're just scaling to scale because our neighbors are scaling, they're getting bigger. I've gotta keep on growing, and there isn't enough emphasis on okay, when do I stop and how do I scale effectively, right?
Yeah, and I think the scaling effectively is really key in that piece as well. Because in this conversation, I'm hearing that the more tasks get piled up, the more you get pulled away from the ultimate client quality. And then the farther you get away, the quicker the cycle becomes of fire to